Okay, so we only have one session left. Today we're going to be talking about negotiating the deals. You all said that you can see the PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okie doke. So what do? We grow our business and we run our business. And today we're in the side of run your business or negotiate the contracts. And that this is an integral part of what you're going to be doing. It's a pivotal point in the transaction. It's important to find common ground and to strive for win-win agreements. Negotiations can be a deal maker or a deal breaker. All right, so we're going to look at the breakdown of the common points of negotiation. We're going to examine the 3P approach to negotiation. We're going to analyze counter tactics, and we're going to do some role play, and then we'll recap everything and talk about our daily success habits. So the common points of negotiation and how to apply tactics, that's what we're going to really cover today. Let me move our little screens. Okay, so here, negotiation is a bargaining process between two or more parties seeking to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter or a mutual concern or resolve a conflict. The graphic on the screen is graphically depicting the negotiation. It happens between a buyer and a seller and their agent, and it also happens between the agents involved in the transaction. Negotiations take place in two areas of the transaction. The offer phase, okay, and that's when you first get a contract, and then the option period. This is while under contract, and the goal is to get the contract executed and closed, okay? So let's see. That says page 5 in the participant guide. Let's see. We'll pull that. Okay, so we want to consider here, how can your ability to negotiate affect the outcome of the deal? What are some ways that you negotiate in your everyday life? And what are great skills that great negotiators possess? And why is questioning important when negotiating? Let's just discuss these topics here. What are you guys, thinking how your ability to negotiate can affect the outcome?
If you're good at negotiation, the outcome will be great. You will get to closing.
When I say negotiate, what are y'all immediately thinking?
Debate.
Debate.
Yeah, going back and forth.
Or meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
A meeting of the minds, and that's something you probably heard 1,000 times in real estate school, right? In pre-license, meeting of the minds. That's where the negotiation comes in, because if you literally get to the point where you have an offer and you cannot come to a meeting of the minds, then you cannot come to an executed contract. You're not going to get to closing, right? And so what are some ways we negotiate in everyday life that maybe we don't think about?
I negotiate with my child every day.
Yes, ma'am, you do. Amen to that. I was negotiating at 10 o'clock last night with a 2-year-old. No. See, the sun has gone down. The moon has come up. It is time.
I would never be that mom.
Right. Okay, with our kids, with our family, right now with my elderly grandmother, trying to go out and about and do all the things that she thinks she just needs to get out of the house and do. So we are constantly, and when you're negotiating though, even with my 2-year-old, and you guys that have kids, you get this, even with the child, you still have to do what? When I said the sun has gone down, the moon has come up, I got to speak a language that he understands. Mm-hmm. And so when we're talking to the seller's agent or the buyer's agent or the buyer or seller themselves, we can sometimes speak in real estate language, and not everybody understands. So I couldn't just say, oh, well, blah, 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 we're trending this 50% down, blah, blah. Like, they're not going to understand that. We have to be able to communicate in a way that helps someone understand what we're saying, and with something you're going to learn in bold, they talk about a lot, is creating urgency. So in your conversation, creating and forming what you're saying to allow someone to a call to action. So that's the one thing that's going to push, and it's going to push that conversion that you have with these conversations over the edge. It's going to help you handle objections, because you're able to see what they're really like afraid of or objecting, and truly like handle it, and you're not passing through somebody, and you're not going beyond what they want and go, oh, well, you said no, but it's really yes. It's literally getting to the point where you're understanding what they're saying. They can understand what you're saying. You can come to a meeting of the minds.
Absolutely.
And why are asking questions important, do you think?
To get your answers.
And why do we go 3 deep? We keep talking about 3 deep. Why do we ask more than one question?
To get to those specifics.
Yes. We all talk about the mother-in-law who pops up at closing and she needs her suite.
Mhm.
And you have not, that's not the house y'all are closing on, right? So you're asking all of these questions. Who's going to live in the home? Who are the decision makers? Remind me again who all's going to be living in this home? You're finding yourself saying the same thing over and over, because you need to get down to the bone and the true what's truly going on. Okay, so we're gonna and that's something you guys in the PC program will be diving deeper into some of the negotiations, right? And role playing more of how to have some of those tough conversations. And just like we talked about, you'll pop up and say, oh, Shacarol said her client did this, Y, Z. And it's always a great exercise to say, okay, what would you have said to this, so that we can all collaborate together. Let's see. Okay, so here is where you'll be doing that. Okay, so some possible, what are some possible things that will be negotiated? Let's just talk about when this time comes. What are we going to be negotiating?
Right.
We talked about the 2 areas, right? So the first phase is what? The offer.
Mm-hmm.
So you're definitely going to be talking about one main thing in the offer phase. It's that price point, that sale price, okay? And then another thing that you'll come up with is the timeline. So those are the 2 first key things. How much are they willing to pay for it? Can they pay for it? Will they pay for it? And when will it take place? Okay, so that in the offer phase. And then for the second phase, that's the option. So when you have a contract, everybody said yes, and then you're getting to closing. What are some things that come up then?
After the contract?
After the initial offer has been approved and agreed upon, what comes next?
So inspections.
Yes, the inspections, the repairs. We actually have a new addendum here at KW that's where you put that, right? And then we talked about last session on, they're not just going to turn in the inspection report and think that they get everything, every light bulb changed, or every crack in the concrete fixed, or the flower beds weeded, right? All of that you have to have that conversation first with. If you're working with the buyer, you got to have that conversation with the buyer, and you're having that in the buyer consultation. You're having that after you submit the offer. You're also having that conversation too when you get the inspection report, and you're setting up the expectation that you're going to get a lot of information on this home. Yet we need to look at health and safety first, and then your non-negotiable second. Not every little thing. And so that's even if you want to look at it like that, that's a negotiation you're having with your client. Then when you submit that list to the seller's agent and say, these are the things we request to be done, that's going to become a negotiation too, right? And the reason that you have that document, the new addendum, is to keep track, so that somebody after closing comes up and says, oh, my agent told me we wouldn't do this, or this supposedly was going to happen, but there's no proof that it happened. Because typically when legal activity pops up, it's after the closing, and somebody said, he said, she said, he said, she said. And just having that document is going to just say, oh, here's our list that we requested. Here are all the receipts where it was completed. As far as the agency is concerned, this is proof it was taken care of, right? That's a negotiation process. Oftentimes you'll turn in a list of however many, maybe you turned in 5 things to the seller's agent. The seller reviews that list and says, okay, I'm not willing to do this and this. They can live with whatever, and I am willing to do this and this, right? And prior, I'm gonna have to stand up, y'all. Prior, maybe they didn't offer a home inspection, right? I mean, not a home inspection, a home warranty prior to this point. And then the seller or the seller agent comes in and says, okay, I'm not going to do maybe all of these things. I'll do these certain things and I'll purchase you a home warranty. Does that make sense? So that's a negotiation. Once everybody agrees upon that, then you have to get estimates and you have to get it all, ready to go so that it meets that timeline. And that is a negotiation. Understanding what you're asking for, understanding the timeline in which it has to be accomplished, and making sure that happens, that's part of the negotiation. And some issues can come up. What else is something that you negotiate after the inspection and repairs before you get to closing? How about closing costs?
Yeah.
Right? Because now we've agreed upon a sale price, and now we're looking at the repair costs, and now we're able to lock down the funding. We need to be sure that the seller is willing to pay whatever their portion has been agreed upon, and the buyer is willing to pay their portion, and they have that available, whatever that down payment is, whatever, we talked about earlier, the paying for the inspection, the paying for the earnest money. Everybody's prepared and knows who's doing what, right? The lender at this point is getting a really great picture where it's not just a broad estimate anymore. There are real numbers come into play at this point. Household fixtures are part of the negotiation sometimes.
And even Katie, the home warranty, a lot of times an agent will say we'll pay up to a certain amount.
And that's where you guys, your fiduciary duty is not just to go, oh, okay, great, and then tell your homeowner or your buyer, oh, they're buying you a home warranty. You want to look at that home warranty. If you don't have that information, like pamphlet or whatever in front of you, and your buyer doesn't know, one, they need to have what the warranty covers. And two, Vicki, I'm sure you'll agree with me, sometimes these home warranties, they'll go, oh, you can buy the $400 one, whatever's the cheapest. That's the one they typically pick. Yet if you're purchasing a 3,000 square foot house with a pool and a 2-car garage and you're going to need the bigger package.
Right.
Those home warranties are not one size fits all. So that's where you need to do a little research on whatever home warranty they're offering. Does that make sense? Everybody good? Feel good? Good. Am I scaring you, or are you feeling this is old news to you all?
Katie, for the household okay, so for the home warranties, we can ask them before it goes under
during the offer
contract
phase
for that. Okay.
Yeah, you can ask for a home warranty.
And also
home warranty can come up several times throughout this journey.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So
And be sure, just like when we were saying, the home warranties, they come with like a standard, a premium, and like a 3 different ones, where the higher one normally covers a lot of more things, like a pool, if you have 2 refrigerators and different things like that. So you have to look at the home warranty, and sometimes you might want to specify in the contract that I want a 210 or
okay,
whichever one it is, so they know. They don't say, okay, when they see it, they say the $400 one.
Yes.
So you name which one that you are asking for your buyer.
And in these negotiations, to piggyback off what you said, Vicki, is you're getting as specific as possible. right? Whether you're asking for the home warranty, whether you're asking for, it's more than just the price and the date that they want to close. If they have gone in this home and they fell in love, and I had this happen to me, y'all. They fell in love with the kitchen because it had state-of-the-art appliances and a really nice, like, under-the-counter wine cooler. Okay, what do we know about things that typically come with the home? They have to be affixed to it. Well,
Yes.
They usually
some of
say.
those appliances are, and some of them are not. And
Mhm.
so when we got through to the final walkthrough, that precious wine cooler was not there. I mean, several things that they assumed was coming with the home was not there.
Mhm.
So that caused some definite problems. You want to be extremely specific. And then we already talked about, even if it's on, just because it's on MLS saying
Mhm.
home comes with blah, 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 you need to write it in that offer
Okay.
and specifically say at no added value.
Mhm. Even detached storage sheds.
Yes, Vicki, yes. I've seen people pull up shrubs. That's not going to be standard, but they could, right? So,
Mhm.
if it's a beautiful rose garden in the back, and that's part of the feature that the buyer fell in love with, yet those are all great grandmama's roses that have been passed down hundreds of years, you think they're going to leave that rose garden? Probably not. You always want to ask,
So can we ask these things even before an offer is sent? So like when you reach out to
Yes,
the seller saying,
yes.
"Hey, I'm sending you an offer.
Mm-hmm.
What about appliance? Are the appliances going to stay?"
Okay, so let's think about it on the buyer side versus the seller side. Are you on the seller
Okay.
side as you're asking this, Tiffany?
The buyer side. The buyer side. So
The buyer
before
side,
you.
that's when you're having the conversation. Vicki, you finish your showing, you get in your car, you immediately call that sell agent, and they have fallen in love with it. They want to put an offer in. So you're calling that sell agent saying, the listing agent saying, okay, they love this and this and this and this, and you're listing off those things specifically about the home. And then you say, is there anything we need to know as we're creating our offer that they're not willing to part with, or whatever it is? Because they're going to come up if it's about the storage shed or about the patio furniture or the curtains or whatever. Like, you want to mention those then to see, and that way the list agent can have the conversation with the seller. And then the same
And
thing, if it's your listing, you're going to come into a home and see several of them are like extremely beautifully decorated and with interior design features, this, that, and the other. And so you want to ask, okay, if we get the offer that you're wanting for this, what is it that you're going to be leaving with the home? And then what is it that you're willing as part of our negotiation? If we got to it, would you be willing to part with this wine cooler? Right?
and even with my last showing, I do remember that the lady said that she was living in an apartment right now. So when we went on the showing, it had a washer and dryer.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her, well, the house really was fully furnished, but it was vacant.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh, I would love to have this washer and dryer." And I said, "Okay." And I told her how I worded in my uh, additional provisions. Yeah. I said, all appliances to remain, including refrigerator and washer and dryer, at no additional cost.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that we got. They accepted our offer, and they accepted it with leaving the washer and dryer and refrigerator. And yes, they didn't have the washer and dryer in the
Right.
MLS, but they did have the refrigerator to remain. But it's not, it has to be in the contract. You have to put
Yes.
it in the contract in order for
Yes.
it to be
Right.
yes.
Because you want to make sure that everything is covered and you're not making any assumptions. And I've seen it too, Vicki, where maybe the appliances, the kitchen appliances, the last buyer I had, he was moving cross country, right? So he didn't want to haul. He had all those things, but he didn't want to haul the refrigerator, the washer and dryer, all of the things that would typically go with a home. And so I had a conversation with the sell agent, listing agent, and I said, hey, look, he's really expecting these items. I mean, pull, pump, pull, whatever that little thing called, what is it, the little robot that goes in there, Polaris, all the pull features, all the pull supplies. And there were several things that he didn't want to move cross country with. And so I had that conversation with the listing agent, and I said, what are the odds of them leaving this and this and this? Most of it they were okay with. One of it was they had just bought this really nice refrigerator. And she said, I want to take this refrigerator, but I'm going to replace it with one at this value, or I'll credit. At this point they could credit back or take off the price point, or there's a million ways you can work it out to have that meeting of the minds. So if it's something it's really important that you know exactly what your buyer is expecting, and you know what your seller, if you're on the selling side, is expecting. And that's why we're asking question after question after question, is to get down to what they're willing to negotiate with. And Vicki, you brought it up the other day, what's the non-negotiable? It's really important. You need to know that, whether it's features on the home they're purchasing, or features in the current home, and things that they're fixtures, whatever they're taking with them, or are they willing to negotiate? Like if you love the curtains and the hanging rods and they're all designer, you don't really want to part with them, and yet someone comes in and asks for those, if it's priced right and all the other terms are right, they're probably going to leave the curtains. You know what I'm saying? Like, does that, y'all get it? I think sometimes we overthink, and until you're able to have some of these conversations, Vicki, you'll probably agree, it feels daunting because you're like, oh my God, they're going to ask for everything. Yet you really need to know your seller, and you really need to know your buyer really well. And you need to be able to, the whole point of this is to be able to have a conversation with somebody else and say, this is what they're wanting, and make it happen. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think we kind of brainstormed on negotiation topics that will pop up. Let's talk about the other common points of the negotiation. We're going to dive a little bit deeper. So they typically fall into the two categories, and we've kind of brought this up already. Price and terms. The sales price is the primary factor in the negotiation, but it's not necessarily the bottom line. The seller can receive multiple offers at the same price, and it's the terms that are going to win. Okay. So in offer terms, it could be the buyer's financial position. So what sort of financing are we looking at? What's the timeline of it? What's the terms that the financing has? What's the timeline that they're going to be closing on the home? So it can be financial or time-based, or both. When the buyer and seller can't agree on the sales price, it gets down to these 5 offer terms. You want to write these down. You ready? 1, closing costs. 2, closing date. 3, conveyances. 4, earnest money. And 5, repairs. What are y'all's thoughts about those 5 things? Do I need to say them again, or do y'all got them? Do you have them?
It's just all sounding familiar from what I'm dealing with.
Because you're right in the middle of it.
Yes.
Yeah. We should have had this session before, Shakarol.
Right.
No, you're learning through it, and luckily I think you have a pretty good situation. So you're failing your way forward. I don't even want to say failing, because I don't feel like you're failing, but you're learning through it, right?
I am.
It's a learning situation. So this closing costs thing, what do y'all hear, or what do you think when I say closing costs? What are your thoughts? Do you feel like you have a good grasp on how that comes about, where that number comes from? Shakarol said, I do now. I do now. So that comes from, and that's when you're going to need the lender involved in the conversation, because they will be able to narrow it down. And in Shakaryl's case, her lender is out of state. So they're not even familiar with, as far as the attorney and settlement costs that kind of gets wrapped up together. So she had to reach out to an attorney here to get that number. She had to get it that number 2 ways, right? And oftentimes, if you're working with a lender that's not familiar with the closing attorney that's going to be used, you need to know those numbers too. You need to know what those closing costs look like. And then we've talked about with the Keller Mortgage, they do that 0+ loan program. And I'm actually got a call with them to come and talk to our office to tell us more about that too. So knowing those things and knowing kind of what can be expected, that'll change things. And that depends on the terms of the loan, and it's going to be on an individual basis. So I can't tell you guys every home that you're going to sell at $200,000 is going to be X closing cost. It's going to be different every time. And that's when you have to know and speak to the lender of your buyer, right? And that way you can know what's to be expected. And I actually, Vicki, you can tell me what you've done in this situation with my listings, and I get an offer and this got the price, it's got the closing costs that the seller is expected to pay. And I've had to go to one of my lender friends and say, hey, is this, something that I can expect at this price point? So that I know it's not like they're not asking for $8,000 and it's really just going to be $3,000. Although once you get to the closing point, that money cannot just be, so if a seller agrees to pay, we're going to use $8,000, agrees to pay the $8,000 and it comes down to it and the closing costs are only $3,000, that money cannot just be, that $5,000 is not just given to the buyer.
Right. For example, this lady that I'm working with, she got a conventional 30-year conventional fixed mortgage. And we asked for $4,000 in closing costs. They are only allowed a certain 3%, which would have been $3,750. That's one thing too, Katie. I want you to get somebody that can talk to us about how, because I don't know yet what percentage you can only ask for the loan. And I think I'm getting it. I think it's, if the loan is financed with the mortgage company, 90-some%, the only thing that you can ask them for is what's left, the 3%.
Right.
And I do want you to try to get us somebody that can talk to us about that. But that's what she said. She said they can only pay 3%, which was $3,750. So they agreed to the $4,000. So that means they paying more than really what we need. But that other that's left, we can't say, okay, well, let them pay for the appraisal. You can't do that. Mm-hmm.
It has to be literally on that amount of money can only be applied to closing costs and settlement costs, right? It can only be applied to what you ask for in the contract. And then again, the same deal, Vicki, if you guys ask for $4,000 and the closing cost winds up being $5,000, who comes up with that? Who comes up with that $1,000?
The buyer.
Right. So you have to be prepared to know that.
And it is more.
Mm-hmm.
So even with, so the way she knows she have to do, they can only pay $3,750, but it's more. So the difference plus what she had to bring to the table for the down payment, she has to pay it.
Yeah. So, and we'll have more conversations with different lenders and things like that. And that's something too, Vicki, I can get you connected with to come to y'all's specific group to have a mastermind with.
Yes.
And it's going to be different on the different loans, right? Y'all know that there's going to be different loans. It's not all conventional. It's not all FHA. There's different loan types so that people can be approved, yet there are different terms So you can't just ask for anything. And that's where these key relationships with our affiliate partners are so important. And that's why
Yes.
we do make it a point to have them come and talk to business meetings. We do have them come, at different situations and come doing lunch and learns. And if you see lenders in our area doing some of those activities, join in with them. I don't know that a lot of them since COVID have done a lot, but typically they'll do like a monthly meet and greet, or they come to our luncheons, they come to board events. You want to go, hey, I'm Gerald, I'm a new agent and I'd like to talk to you at some point, right? So you can have a one-on-one conversation with them. And I have never met a lender or a closing attorney that was offended with an agent asking questions. Because what normally happens is the agents pretend like they know everything and they get down to closing and it's a disaster. So just don't be afraid to ask questions, and asking them even before you have a deal, y'all. Don't be afraid to ask. In our area, our affiliate partners are very happy to help, whether it's home warranty, whether it's a lender, whether it is a closing attorney. Vicki, I'm sure you'll agree, everyone is very kind. So don't be afraid to ask them questions.
Yes.
All right, let's see our next slide. I don't have that one. A video on negotiation. I don't have a video, y'all. Let's see. Bear with me and I'll find our video. I don't want you guys to miss out. Oh, I can't minimize. You guys have been so gracious this whole time. I feel like I should play some hold music. Da-na-na-na. Let's talk about our ahas while I'm looking for this. What are your ahas so far in Negotiate?
Well, I think that negotiation is really natural and we don't realize it. Like sometimes, like when we see things, we naturally ask, well, what's the deal with this? What's the deal with that? Like you go to a house or whatever and you're a buyer agent and there's an old car in the yard. You're gonna naturally ask, well, what's going on with that car right there?
Right.
Are you guys gonna do anything with it?
And you better ask about that, because it could be sitting there on closing day.
Not only that, is after you're with your buyer or seller for so long, you start to know them. And so you start these, like, I know for me, this is one of my first one, which was my first one. And so I was like, okay, well, I was going in the blind, but hey, they didn't know that. So I just started to learn things. So now, because our last deal got crashed, we now going into starting over again, looking at homes, I know things to ask before they ask me, to go ahead and give them details, because I've heard them asking certain questions before that I've had to get back with them on. Now I already know what they're going to ask, especially the husband.
I surely did not see this video, guys. We're just going to have to skip it today, unfortunately. I thought maybe I had missed it when I downloaded everything. I just do not see it. There's one more place right here. Nope, no video. So that's okay. If I find it later, I'll share it with you guys. Let me go back to our PowerPoint.
Well, I'm just gonna share this little story with you while we
Perfect.
Yesterday I had to exchange, and I've been in the last few days, we've been doing the lawnmower thing. We, got 8 acres of land, and we just started off with not knowing what we needed as far as a lawnmower. So the last few days it's been okay. I know we had to get a 0 turn. Well, we got one from Home Depot, and it's just not heavy enough, steady enough for what we have. Well, I went to this place on Troy Highway. They sell commercial And we were talking, and I talked to him about, I know we needed one, and to fast forward, I told him I had one that my father-in-law had previously owned, and before he got down sick, he wasn't using it. Do he take trade-ins? And he was like, oh, yeah, oh, I'll definitely give you something for it. And I said, okay. Well, he didn't say anything to me about what condition it had to be in or anything. So that's why you have to be specific. So yesterday when I went to get the lawnmower, and I had the other one, me and my brother, we had the other one on the truck that we were going to trade in. So I called him out and I asked him what he'll give me for this lawnmower. He was like, $200. And I was like, oh no, I know when you sell it, you're gonna get more than $200 for it. You just told me you got one back there just like it, and I see it. And you told me you're gonna sell it for $700. I was like, no. He was like, okay, what you think I should give you for? I said, I think at least 5. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, make a long story short, when we finished, he did end up giving me $500 for the lawnmower. Well, when I bought the other lawnmower and was leaving, he was like, you told me you were a realtor, and I hope you I bet you making really good money. You really are a high producer. And I said, believe it or not, I am one. I am one of the high producers. And he was like, I can believe that because you are a great negotiator. So I took that as a compliment. And I also thought about, we negotiate in different things. And like you said, Gerald, it comes natural, because even when we go in the store, if we think we can pay lower for something, we try it, even if they say, oh, well, this is not on sale.
And you guys, I don't know how much y'all have been around Adam Beams, our operating partner. He will negotiate over a case of toilet paper at Costco. And I'm not even kidding you guys. I've seen him do it. And with all these new things in our market center, not one thing was paid for full price. So, I mean, and I'm going to get him to do some sort of negotiation class, because he gets really creative when negotiating deals and having the conversation. So look forward to that too. Now we're just kind of covering, an overview to give you guys like what to expect. But as you get more into it, and that's why I was looking for that video for you guys, because if you can see somebody, and that's why they do these script offs and they do script wars and things like that, because you're going to get thrown something and you're going to become more natural, better having these negotiation conversations. It's really amazing to see somebody who's just like, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they're going to get you back to your motivation and a yes.
Well, when I took the real estate negotiation certification at MAR, that's what they say. You bring them, because we've been talking about buyers, but just think somebody that has listed a home and they said, well, this was my grandmother's house, and it's time for us to let it go. But then every time you get an offer, they like, oh no, you got to bring them back to, okay, now why did you say you want to sell this house? You have to bring them back to their motivation, and they, that right there is what really get them to a meeting of the minds to say, okay, yeah, I really do need to go on and do this.
Well, and I'll tell you guys too, I keep telling you about the offer on my last listing before I became a team leader, and they offered what? $50,000 less than list price. You typically won't see that, yet you may. And so my seller was offended. We didn't have any other offers coming. So I had to have that like conversation with him to say, what does it hurt to counter this? And we ended up closing, I think it was either $3,000 or $6,000 away from list price. So you can't just assume any offer that comes if you're the listing agent. You have to be able to encourage your seller to be willing to negotiate, right? It's all that coming to a meeting of the minds. And with us, there's at least a minimum 4 parties. But typically the seller's got a spouse and maybe a child or somebody they're advising. So there's probably about 5 people at the seller, and there's probably at least 3 to 10 with the buyer, and everybody's got an opinion. So you really got to be able to like have that conversation and guide that conversation. Let's talk about the 3 Ps. This will probably help us narrow it down for that. So negotiation is a skill that can be learned. We talked about that, and perfected with experience. The best practice for negotiating and bringing the buyer and seller together, that's what we're doing, we're bringing all the parties together, is the 3P approach. Prepare, present, position. Preparation is key to building confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process, right? If you have listed a home and you have this offer on it and it's 3 weeks, 30 days, 90 days, 100 days, 10 days from when you listed it, what do you immediately have to be doing and knowing? What the market's doing, any changes in the market, right? And so that's part of that preparation. When you're putting an offer, you're on the buyer side. What are you doing every time they want to put an offer in on something? You're looking at the market, looking at the sale price versus what your buyer wants to offer versus what is the market is supporting, right? And then present, you're presenting that. So you're having that, you know, all of the documents you need. You've got your financing already prepared that you could submit with that. You have prepared them that they know they need earnest money. You know, that is all buttoned up. And then you're in a position to move both parties to close. So as we're talking negotiation, what's going to help you get in position? When you hear position, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking leverage.
Okay. Yeah. To know where you're at and what you can leverage. The next few slides break it down. So in the prepare, we know our goal, we know our client, we're thinking ahead, we're informed of what the market's going on. I don't know why this has to be in here, but we're obeying license law. And we know the documents inside and out. So you need to know each section. So when they call you on the phone, especially guys right now when we're doing a lot of things electronically, and they call and go, what does section 12 mean? Oh, well, that's actually the wood infestation. This is what that means. You know, like you need to be able to explain that in terms. So familiarize yourself with that. Okay. And then, so the do and the prepare is to ask open-ended questions, right? So that you have the responses you need and that you have unlimited response options. What additional information should I know? What is important about closing in 30 days? How do you feel about it? Okay. So when you're asking the close-in questions, do you have to sell your home by a specific date? Do you have other offers? What is the bottom line price you would consider? So you see the difference in the 2 ways to ask questions. Some other clarifying questions here in the preparation part are, what is it about this house that makes it your favorite? What is the possibility of you paying for the repair and we stay at the asking price? What if the seller counters with a full offer and fixes the roof and updates the counters with no other repairs? These are things that are gonna pop up. So you need to be able to, as your buyer is asking for this and this and this and this and this, okay, are you willing, if we've submitted that over to the seller and they say they're not willing to do any of this, but they'll do this price? Or if you'll pay, we'll deduct the price to reflect, and we're not gonna do any repairs. Or we are gonna do repairs, but we're gonna stay here. Does that make sense? Like you need to be able to see kind of all sides of what's going on so that you can prepare your people for that as well. Then you say, what would happen if? We just talked about that. What would happen if they did no repairs? You can call the other agent. You pay attention to nonverbal cues here. You're keeping quiet so that you can listen. And then you are asking the specific question. So why is this important? Why is it important? You're going to ask, why is it important 1,000,000 times? And what is that? Why do you want to know if it's important to them? To get to their
Motivation.
motivation.
And even too, if this deal falls through, when you're looking again, you've heard over and over and over again what it is that they really want.
And you guys, we talk about all the time, do not see your clients as one time. These are going to be lifelong relationships and give you referrals. So the better you know them, the better you're going to be able to serve them, and the better they're going to have a better trusting relationship with you, and they then can refer you to others. We are working with people that are going to be champions of our business. Think about it like that. So don't be afraid to ask the question, because it's drawing you guys closer together. Okay, let's see.
I know for me, when I was asking my clients questions, I noticed they would say what they needed to do. Like they would want to lowball the offer because they claimed that they needed to add this to the house. And I had to just finally tell them, you don't need to add that to the house. You want to add that to the house. Now, if this house doesn't fit you, let's look elsewhere.
Right.
Because they're not going to lower their price off of what you want to do to the house.
Right. Right. And Shacarol, you bring up a great point, because when we're working with buyers or sellers, we need to bring it to the lens for them and put it into the picture of the situation right now. They may have a larger plan, but we've got to help them focus on this, right? And we can always help them and refer them to, if they've got contractors or add-ons or whatever they want to do in the future, we can help them with that. We want to be sure to convey that to them. But in this scenario, while we're negotiating, we're in the middle of, the objective is to get to close, right? So you kind of have to come back, and in Keller Williams, you hear a lot at the focusing question, the focusing thing. So what is the focusing? You got to bring them back to focus. All right. So I kind of skipped ahead a second, but in the present portion, you're paying attention, you're listening to verbal and nonverbal, you're keeping quiet once you present the offer. Why do you think that's important?
You're keeping quiet. You say
You present the offer to the seller, or whether you're the buy side or the listing side, and then you be quiet. So if you're on the buy side though, you're presenting that offer, and then you're not calling your buyer and getting them stirred up. You're setting the expectation that you've submitted it, that you've communicated with the agent, and this is the timeline to expect feedback, right? So that because it can create, they're impatient, they're excited, they're like, it's kind of like, I want to hear. Okay, they're going to take time and review the offer. If you're on the listing side of things, of course you want to explain what the contract and the offer means, and you want to put it into those terms we talked about, right? Here's this price, here are the terms, but you want to let them decide. You're giving them the market data, you're giving them the information from the offer, but then you're not going, I would wait, blah, blah, blah. We don't want to insert our opinions at this point. I think that's where some people kind of get misconstrued. You want to give them the information and point them back to their motivation and their wants and needs. You want to listen carefully to what's important to the other party. Want to stay calm and relaxed and focus on the customer's needs, and you want to give that offer the best chance, right? So that's what's important after you present an offer. Okay, so some of these slides are all messed up, you guys. I don't know. All right, so here's how you ask what and how questions I am missing all kinds of slides. Let me skip around. how questions so that you can get down to the bottom line. So the buyer wants to close in 60 days and the seller wants to close in 30 days. Mr. Miss Seller, you're requesting a 30-day close. What is it important to you about closing in 30 days? And if they get defensive, because they will, and my goal is to let the buyer know why this is important. So if you are working both sides, that's the conversation. If not, you're saying to the listing agent, what is important to your seller about closing in 30 days, right? And that way you can understand what's important to the other party so that you can prioritize that and address the issues, right? That way that you can come up with solutions and have that meeting of the minds that we talked about. Okay, let's see. Read the instructions on page. Guys, this is so weird because my little handout here says page 16 and this says page 12. So let me read and see what it says, looking like going back and forth for the position. So that's something that, you know what, Vicki, I'm going to make sure that you have you do have all the participation, but we can pull this out so that that's exercise that you guys can do as a group.
Okay.
Some of these positioning with it, because my instructor manual, I guess, is mixed up between the slides. So we'll make sure that you guys are able to role play that and understand more of how to position yourself. The key thing I think to remember is in the positioning, you have to know their motivation. You have to know them really well and be able to communicate so that you can say, if not this, then this, because that's really coming to terms and to agree together. So analyzing counter tactics. All right, let's talk about that. Let's look at some counter tactics here. So the tactics are, I like this, hot potato, good guy, bad guy, and nibbling. Okay, so counter tactics. Ask for a concession in return before agreeing to any further concessions. B, test the validity and find out if the problem is real. Has the party with the problem exhausted every solution? Or C, call them on their game. If it continues, then what attributes the bad guy says to the good guy? Since they are a tag team, this is likely that will diffuse the situation because you know you have two bad guys. You now have two bad guys. So the hot potato, I think that's B. You're testing the validity. So you're seeing, like, is this really an issue that needs to be pressing, or are they kind of just, you know, and then the nibbling. So asking what concession are they willing to give? What's going on before you agree to anything further? So these are just some tactics about how you can look at things. And again, this will be in more depth in that participation guide, and we'll make sure that y'all all have access to that. I think one thing you guys probably have already been taking a lot of notes from Ignite, and I don't know if y'all have the printouts or whatever. I don't know that the printouts have been necessary except for some of the activities. You will need those toolkits. It's got the scripts and it's got all of the objection handlers and things in there, and some little questionnaires and things that'll be helpful to you. All right, so let's do our recap and our ahas. What are we thinking? What are we feeling? What tools are we going to use? What actions are we going to take?
Katie, for me, I think negotiation is like a relationship, you know, like a marriage or just dating or what have you. Is that you have to compromise. You're going back and forth to make sure that the relationship is happy and ongoing. And I think that's the greater part of negotiating is you know, finding that meeting of the minds, but it's a relationship though.
Yeah, you're not in any way just steamrolling. You're having a conversation. You're asking questions. You're asking questions. You're asking questions, so that you can you have to have an agreement, right? And so that's why it's not just a steamroll attitude. It's more of a like you're saying, Gerald, a relationship. You got to look at it like that. So whether you're, and oftentimes, you know, you don't know the other agent from Adam, you don't know the seller, nor are you typically going to get to know the other side, or you don't really know the buyer, but you still have to have, even if it's a temporary relationship, enough to respect one another and have a conversation so that you can, you know, everybody's motivation, the buyer should be able to buy, the buyer's agent should be able to help their buyer buy and close the deal. The seller should be able to sell, and the seller agent should be able to sell and close the deal. So everybody should at least have that common to get to the point of close. All right, who else?
I've had to learn with this experience is that you have to negotiate with your side first. Like for me, right now I'm the buyer's agent, so I have to negotiate with my buyers, and I have to remind them that they chose me because they trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to trust that I will use my knowledge and my expertise to help them get what they want.
And Shacarol, that's not always easy to just come out and say.
Mm-hmm.
Yet,
but I had to say it.
It's powerful. And I love that about you, that you like, you got the backbone to say, okay, we got into this relationship. And that's where that buyer agency agreement and all of that, setting that tone, saying that we are in this agency relationship and I'm the professional, I'm the expert, you are the person who wants to purchase. It aligns those roles. So you can come back to that. I can't say that to somebody that I'm just like showing them homes. Because I'm not acting like the professional.
Mm-hmm.
I'm acting like a showing agent. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am a business owner, every business has orders of operation, policies, guidelines, systems, and that's what you guys are getting in alignment with right now of your own. And so you're not going to go be willy-willy, and you will be able to say, all right, you trust me to do this, so you need to trust me every step of the way. You're going to have to say that in a loving, kind way, which Shacarol, I'm sure you did.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany, what are your ahas, honey?
The 3 Ps, definitely. So I just have to make sure that I'm perfecting those.
Mm-hmm.
And the 5, the 5 common points to make sure that we're always sticking to like the bottom line. These are the main things. So that's a good thing for me to steady up on.
Mm-hmm.
So to study it, and also it helps with like when I'm studying the contract. It really helps. So that's going to.
That's what I was about to say too. It takes that contract and puts it into terms that you don't have to know all the legal jargon kind of stuff is not really what you're going to explain to somebody. They want to know, what is the price? When will I close? When will, like they want to, you have to simplify it. And that's what we're all doing. We're taking all this stuff. It seems like it could be overwhelming, and we're just focusing it down to 3 things or 5 things. And at this point we do this, at this point we do this, at this, we've got the offer phase, and then, we've got the next phase. It broke it down into very tangible items, so that now you guys, I hope your big aha from this course is that literally anybody could do it and everybody won't. So take that as you may. All right, I'm going to, Vicki, did you have anything you wanted to add before we wrap up the recording?
I just wanted to say on the field, I feel a little different about making sure that we don't put, if I was you, I would. We don't,
Opinion. Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We want to keep it, okay, there's a bold law that says logic makes you think, emotions make you act.
Mm-hmm.
So when you guys are negotiating, that's something to really keep in the forefront of your mind, because you're giving them the logical information and the data, okay? And the emotion part is not my opinion. It's not your opinion. It's their motivation. And if you don't know their motivation and you're getting down to the negotiation point, there's going to be some frustration. It has to be. It's one of the biggest assets anybody will ever buy and sell in their entire lives. If you're talking with first-time home buyers, it's a huge thing, right? And how often do we run into somebody saying, I'm the first person in my family to purchase a home? So it can be very big and very full of a lot of different emotions. We don't want all the different emotions that are going to happen. Yet what we're dealing with is their motivation to buy or sell, and we're giving them the logic to make them think and come to their own conclusion. We're not opinion, right? When you go to the doctor, if you have your doctor worth salt, they don't say, well, my opinion is this. If they do, they say, my what? Professional opinion is. Right? They're not just throwing something out there. You go to the mechanic and they don't go, well, I think that you need to replace your motor. Because if they did, you would go, well, where'd you come up with that? Like, you have to have sound reasoning. And we should not say, I think, I feel. Unless it's, I'm thinking about you and I feel that I needed to call you. So let's talk about our 40 contacts, because we've amped it up. But how long have we been doing 20 contacts? When did we start Ignite? April 1st.
April 1st, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been doing 20 contacts for a month. Yesterday on Bold and on the business meeting, and James Shaw has been saying since March 16th was his first call. Okay. He's been saying since then 40. Okay. So what are y'all feeling about amping it up to 40? And I really liked how he broke it up. Do you remember how he broke it up?
Yeah.
He said
I like
so many texts, so many calls, so many
20
social media.
20 in the morning with calls, being call-based to get to that point, whether it's voicemail or just call until you get somebody with your database and your sphere. And then 20 like digital, either it could be text messages or direct messages or social media touches or whatever in the afternoons. So that way, and we're growing our databases by leaps and bounds. And then we have more people to touch and we have more people to love on. And right now you have a perfect reason to call somebody. Our Red Day first responders. And after May 14th, you won't have that anymore. You got to come up with something else. So take this opportunity and you can just leave voicemails. Hey, I wanted to let you check in and see how you were doing. I'm sorry I missed you. I want to let you know about something our office is doing to give back to the first responders in our community. Go through the whole thing and say, I'm going to send you a follow-up message or follow-up text with some details. Would you share that with anybody you know that could use that? That it compounds, right? And when they call you back or they message you back and they say, oh my gosh, that's so neat. I blah, 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 blah. I know so-and-so who's a first responder. I know blah, blah, blah. So if they said to you, I know so-and-so that's a first responder, or I know so-and-so restaurant, the first responder more so, hey, could I get their information so that I can make sure they're added to the list? And what are you doing with that too? Coming back into your database. Coming back into your database. That's an easy conversation right now. You know, they say inviting somebody to church is really easy, but I think this is even easier than that. Okay. On your calls right now, please go through all of your social accounts. Send out messages. Make sure that everybody knows. No one is going to be offended that you let them know that our office is giving back to the community. Okay. Care, compassion, common sense. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.